The message blinked on my phone screen, sharp and unrelenting. Lucy, your sister's engagement is this weekend. It's important. You need to be there. If you don't, I'll cancel your tuition fee. I stared at it, the words blurring together. It wasn't the first time he'd threatened me with money, but this time, it stung more than usual. I could almost hear his voice in my head, stern and disappointed, as if he were speaking to the girl who'd been waiting for his approval her whole life. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I closed my eyes, and the memories came rushing back. I was the shadow in a family obsessed with perfection. My sister was the star, always the star. She had golden hair that shone under the sun, trophies lined up like soldiers on her shelf, and a smile that seemed to light up every room. I was the afterthought. The other child, I remember standing in the hallway of our house, clutching my school report card, heart racing with anticipation. I had worked hard, aced every subject, and thought, maybe this time, I'd be enough. I handed it to my father with trembling hands. He glanced at it briefly, muttered, "Good job," and turned back to his newspaper. But when my sister brought home a gold medal from a dance competition, the entire house erupted. "Look at you, sweetheart. You're going to be famous one day." I stood there, invisible, as my own achievements melted into the background. My father's love was like a distant star, bright but unreachable. He was never cruel, just absent. Absent in the way that left scars you didn't realize until you grew older. While my sister had her dance recitals, piano concerts, and birthday parties filled with glitter and attention, I was the one who sat quietly in the corner, hoping to be noticed. I remember one Christmas when I got a book as my gift, a cheap, second-hand one. My sister received a brand new tablet, wrapped in shiny paper with a giant bow. I smiled, but my heart felt hollow. "You're not jealous," I told myself. "You're just fine." But I wasn't fine. There was a moment, though, a small moment that changed everything. I was in the school library, surrounded by books, working on a project. I had stayed late, hoping to impress my teacher, but when I finally got home, my father was waiting. "Why weren't you at your sister's recital?" he snapped. "I had homework," I whispered, not daring to explain that I'd been working on something important too. He didn't even look at me. Instead, he sat in the living room, watching her performance on the TV. That was the day I realized I'd never be enough for them. Now, here I was, years later, with the same old message from my father: "Lucy, your sister's engagement is this weekend. It's important. You need to be there. If you don't, I'll cancel your tuition fee." I clenched my jaw. "They're still trying to control me," I thought. Still trying to make me feel small, but I wasn't small anymore. I opened my laptop, the cool glow illuminating my face. I clicked on the link to my website, the product of sleepless nights, endless emails, and the determination to prove I was more than their afterthought. I hit send. "Here's my website. Maybe you'll see that I don't need your support." I didn't expect a response, but I got one. The message had been sent. "Here's my website. Maybe you'll see that I don't need your support." I stared at the screen, my heart racing. Not because I was nervous, but because I felt nothing, no guilt. No regret. Just a strange, hollow emptiness. I had expected silence. After all, what could they possibly say? My father had always been indifferent, and my sister? She was too busy being the center of attention to care about me, but the next day, my phone buzzed. Dad said, "I saw your website. It's impressive. I didn't realize you were doing so well." I blinked. I didn't know what to feel. Pride? Resentment? Both. I typed back, "Yes. I am." And that was it. I didn't expect a reply. But I got one. "Dad, I'm proud of you, Lucy. You've done really well." I stared at the message, the words feeling foreign coming from him. Over the next few days, the messages kept coming. "I saw your latest project. It's really creative. You've grown so much. I remember when you used to struggle with your presentations." I didn't know how to respond. Was this guilt? Was this finally the father I had wanted all along? But the weirdest part, my sister joined in. "Sister, wow, Lucy. Your website is amazing. I had no idea you were doing this well." I blinked at the message. Was this sarcasm? Or genuine thanks? I replied cautiously, but the compliments kept rolling in. My father called me. His voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. Lucy, I'm really proud of what you've built. You're doing amazing things. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why are you suddenly being nice? I finally asked. There was silence on the other end. I guess I just didn't realize how successful you were. I thought you needed us more. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. So, that's what it was. They weren't being kind because they cared. They were being kind because I was now someone of value. After that, things shifted. I started getting more messages, not just from my father, but from my sister too. Hey, Lucy. How's business going? We're so proud of you. They'd send memes, random texts, even how are you doing? Messages like we were long-lost friends. But I saw through it. This wasn't love. This was manipulation. They wanted something, and I knew exactly what it was. One day, my father called me. Lucy, we've been thinking. Maybe you could help us out financially. Things are a bit tight lately. I stared at the phone, my heart pounding. They're asking me for money, I thought, after all the times they ignored me, belittled me, made me feel like I was invisible. Now they wanted me to help them. I didn't even bother to reply and continued with my work. Few hours later, I received another text. Dad, Lucy, I know we've had our differences, but we're in a tough spot. We could really use your help. I stared at the message, feeling that familiar sting of betrayal. After all the times they ignored me, dismissed me, made me feel like I was nothing. Now they needed me. I didn't respond, but the next day, the call came. Lucy, please. We're struggling. I thought you'd be there for us. I clenched my fists. Be there for you. I took a deep breath, my heart racing with anger and resentment. You never were there for me, I snapped. I don't owe you anything. Silence, then a faint, almost broken voice. I just thought maybe we could be a family again. I hung up. A few days later, I received one last message from my father. Dad, Lucy, I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much I hurt you. I miss you. I stared at the message, tears blurring my vision. You miss me. You never noticed I was gone until I was someone you could benefit from. I typed a reply, my fingers trembling with rage and heartbreak. I'm done pretending. I'm done being the backup plan. Don't contact me again. I hit send, and for the first time in my life, I felt free. It had been a month since I'd cut off all contact with my family. The silence between us was deafening, but for the first time in my life, it felt like a breath of fresh air. The weight of their expectations, the constant comparison to my sister, the endless effort to seek validation from people who never truly saw me, gone. My business had continued to grow. In fact, it was thriving. My website was starting to get serious traffic, and I was getting emails from potential clients. I even started a blog on digital marketing and coding. Something I'd always been passionate about but never had the space to explore until now. I felt free in a way that I'd never experienced before, but with success came something I hadn't anticipated, loneliness. I woke up one Saturday morning, the sunlight streaming through my apartment window. My phone buzzed on the table beside me, a notification flashing across the screen. Dad had left a voicemail. I hesitated. For the first time in weeks, I felt the pull to hear what he had to say. A part of me wondered if maybe, just maybe, he had realized what I had realized. That my worth had never been tied to their approval. But the other part of me, the one that was still scarred by years of being ignored, rejected, and belittled, bristled at the thought of hearing his voice again. I took a deep breath and pressed play. Lucy, it's Dad. I know things have been strained between us, but I'm still your father. I'm sorry for the things I've said and done. I miss you. Please, just come home for a visit. We're family. You can't just walk away from that. The message was short, but it carried with it an underlying desperation. I sat back in my chair, my hand gripping the edge of the table, my breath coming in shallow gasps. Come home, was he asking for reconciliation? Or was this just another attempt to manipulate me into submitting to their version of family, one where I was always in the background? Always playing second fiddle to my sister? I stared at my phone for a long time, and then I did the only thing that made sense. I blocked his number. The truth was, the journey to this point hadn't been easy. When I was building my business, I was juggling late nights, countless failed attempts, and endless doubts. I didn't have the luxury of a safety net. I was determined to succeed, not because I believed in myself, but because I was trying to prove something to them. I remember one night vividly. I was sitting in my cramped apartment. The dim glow of my laptop screen illuminating the exhaustion on my face. My bank account was in the red, my rent was overdue, and I needed a crucial investment to keep my business afloat. I turned to my father, desperately hoping, that he'd help. "Dad, I need help," I had said, my voice trembling. "I'm struggling to keep this business going. I just need a little support." His response: "I'm not going to waste money on something that's not even stable. You should have thought of that before you dropped out of the family's expectations." I was crushed. The tuition fee he threatened to cancel? That was the college fund my mother had left for me, a small gesture of love from her. Something she thought would help me have a future. But when I needed it the most, when I was drowning in bills and uncertainty, he didn't lift a finger. Instead, he watched me struggle, as if my failure was just another lesson to be learned. The next few days were filled with an emotional storm. On the surface, everything seemed fine. My business was thriving, I was doing well in school, and I was gaining more independence every day. But there were moments, small, fleeting moments, when I thought about them. About their version of family. There were no calls from my sister. Not that I expected any. She'd always been the perfect daughter, the one who could do no wrong. But that didn't stop the longing inside me from growing, just a little. I tried to push those feelings aside. I was doing fine without them, right? But deep down, I was still waiting for something. Maybe I was waiting for an apology that would never come. 2 weeks later, I got a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I hesitated. When I looked through the peephole, my heart skipped a beat. It was my sister. I opened the door slowly, unsure of what to expect. She stood there, wearing a soft smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hey, Lucy. Can we talk?" she asked, her voice tentative. I stood there for a moment, caught between the urge to slam the door in her face and the desperate need for closure. "I know you've been upset," she said, taking a small step forward. "But I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry." I raised an eyebrow. "Sorry?" I repeated. She nodded, looking down at the floor. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I've always been so focused on myself that I didn't realize how much I was pushing you away." The words felt empty. I wanted to believe her, but the years of neglect, the years of being ignored, overshadowed by her perfect achievements, made it hard. "You're right," I said softly. "You didn't notice. And you don't know what it's like to be invisible in this family." Her eyes flickered. But she didn't respond. Instead, she glanced over her shoulder, as if checking for my father's approval. "Dad's been trying to reach you," she said, her tone now tinged with concern. "He's really sorry, Lucy. He wants to make things right. Please, just come home for a visit." I felt the knot in my stomach tighten. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her how much it had hurt, how many times I had begged for a moment of attention, a moment where I wasn't in her shadow. But instead, I stayed silent, staring at her. "I've built a life on my own," I finally said, my voice steady despite the emotional chaos swirling inside me. "I don't need to come home. I'm not going back to that. Not when the only time I matter is when you need something from me." She looked at me, her face a mixture of frustration and confusion. "But we're family, Lucy. You can't just leave us like this. You don't even know how much we miss you." The word family stung like acid. I'd heard it too many times from people who never once acted like family. "I did leave you. And I'm not coming back." With those words, I closed the door softly, not wanting to slam it in her face, but needing to make it clear. Later that evening, I reflected on what had happened. Was I being too harsh? Too unforgiving? But then I remembered my childhood, the years of living in the shadow of my sister's achievements, the years of being ignored and dismissed. I realized that I wasn't angry because I was abandoned. I was angry because I had always been second choice. When I was little, it was always about my sister. When I got older, I saw how my success was only acknowledged when it became something they could brag about. They never saw me for me, they saw me for what I could offer. In the end, I wasn't just walking away from them. I was walking away from the person I used to be, the one who lived for their approval. I was cutting off the version of myself that felt unworthy unless they validated me. That night, I sat at my desk, staring at my laptop screen. I had just finished a meeting with a potential client, someone who believed in me, who saw my worth without knowing the story of my childhood. I had built something of value without relying on my family, and for the first time, I felt like I was enough. Not because of their praise or their acknowledgement, but because of me. I didn't need their validation anymore. I didn't need them, and that was the hardest thing I had to accept. Because letting go of family is one thing, but letting go of the hope that they might change, that they might finally see me as I am, that was the real breaking point. But now I was stronger. Thought I was free. I thought that once I cut ties with my family, the chapter would be closed, the pages burned, and the past left in the ashes. But life has a cruel way of reminding you that some people refuse to accept your boundaries. It was a quiet Monday morning when my phone buzzed with a message that made my stomach drop. Dad, you're really going to ignore your family, Lucy? We raised you. Don't forget that. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. Is this a joke? I didn't respond, but the messages kept coming. Dad, you have the power to help us. Don't be selfish. Sister, you think you're too good for us now? We're struggling, Lucy. You could at least show some empathy. I felt a surge of anger. Empathy. The same people who never showed me a fraction of empathy in my entire life were now demanding it from me. I blocked both of their numbers. But that wasn't the end. A few days later, I started receiving emails. Subject: You're our family, Lucy. Don't turn your back on us. I opened it with shaking hands. Lucy, we know you're doing well. You've built a life for yourself, but that doesn't mean you can forget where you came from. Your mother's money was meant to be for your future, but we've been struggling. You have a responsibility to help us. I laughed bitterly. Responsibility? The only responsibility I had was to myself. I didn't reply, but the emails kept coming, each one more desperate, more accusatory. Then came the message that shook me to my core. Dad, if you don't help us, we'll have to take matters into our own hands. We know people who can make things difficult for you. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. Is this a threat? I felt a cold wave wash over me. I had always known my family was manipulative, but this? This was something else. I didn't respond, but deep down, fear crept in, not because I was scared of them, but because I realized that they didn't see me as a person. They saw me as a resource. A means to an end. One night, as I sat at my desk working on a new project, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Lucy, it's me. My father's voice crackled through the line. You can't just walk away from us. We're your family. We need you. I clenched my jaw. You're not my family, I snapped. You're the people who ignored me, belittled me, and used me as a backup plan. I owe you nothing. There was a long silence, then he spoke softly. We'll see about that. Click. I stared at my phone, the weight of his words sinking in. They were serious. The next day, I contacted a lawyer. I wasn't going to let them intimidate me. I documented every message, every email, every call. This is harassment, my lawyer said firmly. You have every right to protect yourself. I also filed a restraining order, not because I thought they'd physically harm me, but because I needed to make it clear that I wasn't going to be bullied into submission. After the restraining order was filed, the messages stopped, at least for a while, but something had shifted inside me. I realized that I wasn't just fighting to be left alone, I was fighting to reclaim my life. My business continued to grow, but more importantly, I grew stronger. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. I learned that family isn't always blood. Family is the people who respect your boundaries, who support your growth, and who never make you feel small for being yourself. My family had tried to drag me back into their world, but I was done being their puppet. I was done being the invisible child who only mattered when it was convenient for them. I was free, and this time, there was no turning back.